Hey, it's Paul. Before we get started, we need to make sure that you, the listener, knows that we are not mental health professionals and not qualified to prescribe therapies or therapeutic advice. We are also not your gurus and have no aspirations in that direction. We are simply two people who are trying to feel better and do better in our lives, just like you. And now, on with the show.
Freedom. What up, Fozzie Osbourne?
Fozzie Osbourne. What up, Snack Sabbath? You see what I did there?
It's our Muppet name.
See what I did there?
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Very good.
Call about pre-production?
Yes, of course. I'm calling about pre-production. What do you want? What do you feel like doing this week?
I've been thinking a lot about the notion of chosen family.
Ooh, I love the notion of chosen. We've both been members of chosen. We've both chosen our family for forever. We got a lot of different groups where that qualifies to us. Why haven't we talked about that before? That's a great thing to do.
Well, yeah, exactly. But here's a question for you.
Yeah.
If I needed you to get out of here to help me out in some crazy way, would you get on a plane?
This morning, not a question. Yeah, we are chosen family. I know you do the same thing for me too.
We are chosen family. I got my brother Paul with me. I'm sorry, everyone who's listening is probably so over my terrible voice.
Well,
but
we're gonna have to.
Here we go.
Yeah,
can't help it.
I love it though.
Ridiculous.
All right, so chosen family. I'll see you on Thursday in the studio. Sound
All right.
good?
Later on, brother Paul.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Freedom over fame, freedom over fame, freedom over fame. The cycle stays the same. Freedom over cycle stays the same.
Family can be a loaded word for some of us. And even if you come from a well-adjusted, loving home, the difference in who you are becoming and who your family is may be a difficult river to ford.
The word family means different things to different people. Socially speaking, most people automatically think of the nuclear family, a household with a mother, a father, and 2.5 children. But what does family mean if you are estranged, or adopted, or displaced?
Today on the show, we're talking about the notion of chosen family, its history, the benefits of building one, and how to cultivate one of your own.
So if you're ready for takeoff,
let's go.
Freedom.
Minutes before we fucking record,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. Lovely. Good amount of planning on this podcast.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Nora. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing great. No, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's good to see you.
Good. You're very chatty today, and I love it.
I'm a very chatty person today. I have reasons, but I'm not going to divulge them. But I'm very
I also
chatty.
just found out that Paul doesn't drink caffeine.
I don't.
What?
Not anymore. I used to.
What?
I don't anymore. I just got to the point where I was having one cup of coffee in the morning. I thought, why am I buying caffeinated coffee? Let's just get off of this.
No, dude.
And so now I drink decaf.
I just
Occasional cup of tea.
I have no words.
I know.
I might be silently judging you.
That's okay. I still do heroin. I mean, it's
great.
It's not like I'm giving up everything.
By the way,
I don't do heroin.
Listener.
I don't. All you kids out there, don't say no to drugs.
Don't even think about it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
let's get it. What are we doing today, Nora? What's our topic here?
Today we're talking about chosen family.
I love that idea. I've been members, and you've been member too of many chosen families.
I've got a lot of chosen family. I've got a lot of notes on this too, so we'll have to bear with me as I try to toggle between the screen and the notes I have.
Well, here we are bearing. Hit us with it. What do we want to start? Let's see. You're going to talk about the history first of chosen family?
Well, let's talk about what chosen family is for anyone who's
great.
listening who might not be familiar with like the term chosen family.
Sure.
But it is people who are not biologically related to you but are intentionally brought into the family unit. Like it's the family you choose. It's the people that you get to choose who are close to you and share your life and your grief and your joy and all those things. Yeah, it's I love the notion of chosen family, and I think I've always kind of had I've practiced it, I guess, my whole life.
Yeah, me too.
So I kind of wanted to dive into that because the older I get, the more I realize that like people's notion of family and what they think of as family differs from person to person, and our experiences of family are different from person to person. So if anyone is, the other thing is I kind of wanted to talk about this because as we've talked about before, this whole idea, it's not even an idea, the data showing of like the loneliness epidemic that is happening. I think if we had more intentional communities and chosen family, that would really help people a lot. And so I kind of want to,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of want to just put this out there to put it in people's kind of awareness and maybe give some ideas of how you connect to different people and kind of bring in these families of your own if you are feeling alone.
Can I speak to that loneliness epidemic thing just for
Yeah,
a second before we get on with
please
anything
do.
else? I've been hanging out, as you know, Nora, I've been hanging out on Reddit, which is basically a cesspool. But there
What
are a few,
oof.
there are a few boards that are highly moderated that are not, that are for like men's work that
Yep.
are highly moderated that, they don't let any red pill stuff in there. There's no like incel and misogyny and things like that in there at
Yep.
all. Stuff like that gets wiped immediately if it comes on board at all. Till now, where it just doesn't come on board that much. But anyway, that's beside the fact. What I'm reading though is very distressing from men, not just loneliness, but I've talked before about how every 4 minutes a man commits suicide, right?
Oof.
And there are so many men on this board and some other boards on Reddit who are so close to killing themselves when they
Right.
when they post. This is what they're saying. I don't see a reason anymore. I don't have any friends. I'm ugly. I'll never be married. A lot of these things. And these are guys who are, how old do you think they are, Nora?
I mean, I think they're probably youngish, like,
Yeah, like
I'd say, like, 20s.
24, like
Yeah,
as the one I read this morning. This guy thought his life was absolutely over, and a chosen family would help somebody like that more than a lot of other things. And, in a way,
absolutely.
that's what my men's group has turned into, as a chosen family. We started as random people, but through, authenticity and
Trust
vulnerability
building.
and trust,
Yeah.
that's the difference between chosen family and your friends, right?
It's
And
the
your friend group.
vulnerability thing,
It's the
right?
vulnerability thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's being in the trenches with somebody emotionally, I think.
Yeah, and it also doesn't even have to just be in the trenches, it'd also be celebrating the joy as
For
well,
sure. Oh
right?
yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be invite. It doesn't have to be pain.
right.
But it's
But
usually both.
showing up
Yeah.
for each other.
Showing up for
That's
each
the
other.
thing,
That's
is,
right.
like, knowing how to show up for each other. And the
Right.
thing is, showing up for someone in the ways that I know how to show up doesn't necessarily mean if someone doesn't do the exact kind of love languages that I do to show up for people, it doesn't mean they're not showing up for you. It just means that
Absolutely.
they have a different love language,
Yeah.
and that's another thing you have to, like, keep in mind
Yeah.
when you're looking and when you're connecting with people. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, I wanted to also just, like, say that, some of the I'm not an expert on all these things. So take in mind that if there's some things that I get it wrong about the history or about like communities where chosen family, like the queer community, if I get some things wrong, I apologize in advance about the history or any of that. But I would be remiss if we didn't talk about in the history of how integral chosen family was and still is in the queer community,
Well,
right?
marginalized communities in general, but queer
Yes,
communities specifically, absolutely.
absolutely.
And as Nora said, we usually don't talk about other communities we aren't a part of on this
Yeah.
podcast intentionally, because we don't want to be mouthpieces for something that we
Right,
don't know from the
right,
inside out. But there are some podcasts like this one, as she says, it would be remiss if we didn't talk about chosen family in the gay
right,
community. Yeah.
right, exactly. Well, anyway, I just wanted to start with, like, the fact of the matter that of where I am in my life looking back at my childhood and at my family unit. I come from a large Irish Catholic family, and I'm realizing that, like, oh, I have in many ways, it's not, I don't wanna say an advantage, but I just have an experience that a lot of other people have not had in their families.
Hmm.
Like, when I grew up, my dad was one of 11 kids. So, and he was older, so but, 3 had passed away when he was younger, but I had a lot of aunts and uncles, and I have a lot of cousins, and my family, in my extended family unit, most of them lived within 10-mile radius of where
Wow.
I grew up.
It's a real village, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
right, and on top of that was, my both of my parents grew up in Philadelphia, and we grew up right outside of Philadelphia, and, my aunts and uncles were in Philly or right outside of Philly, and my grandparents were in Philly, and so we were in and out all over the place in the city, but also with that is there were a ton of old friends of my parents who were, like, known as my aunts and uncles, even though they weren't blood related.
Hmm.
And I have, cousins that are not blood related, but I've known them since birth, and my parents' best friends that, their core group of friends of them growing up and their chosen family became, they are my family.
Hmm.
I've witnessed their lives and their deaths and their, so I realized
Like
that
when you
like
were a kid, did you not even know like Uncle Mikey was not your real uncle or whatever?
I did. I knew,
Okay.
like, I mean, it's the thing is they were my real
No, I
uncle,
know, but
but
yeah,
I
blood
knew they
uncle. Yeah.
weren't blood related,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But it was like these were all very trusted people that were there for my graduations. They were
Mm-hmm.
there for all of the, the events in my life and vice versa, and, going to their homes, and,
Yeah.
their kids were my cousins, and we kinda grew up in these units together, and it
Mm-hmm.
was, I look back and I think of how, like, I really love that part of my childhood and that part of my life of just, like, how that was always the norm for me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because, when I got older and, went outside of this area and went, explored life a little bit older on my own, I realized that a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
And what that really means. And some people, and it's for some people, it's by design,
Mm-hmm.
like I get it.
Mm-hmm.
There's the more introverted stuff. And I'm not saying one thing is better than the other. I will say that, like, in the midst of having so many people around, you can kind of get lost in the sauce.
Right.
Your
Yeah.
needs can
Yeah.
be like
Yeah.
kind of like, well, get in line. So there's that aspect of it. And especially like when there's larger families and gatherings and stuff, and especially like back in the day, there were, a lot of the women were cooking for a lot of people, and like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like there was labor to be done to be like child rearing and
Mm-hmm.
to be taking care of people and stuff. So it's not all like blissed out, but
Mm-hmm.
I do appreciate that that was my experience.
It's interesting. My experience is diametrically opposed to yours, except
See, I wanna hear about that.
we both grew up in the hood. I mean, that's our
Yeah, I grew up on
commonality,
the
right?
block. Like,
Yeah, we
I'm
grew up on
not
the
the hood
block.
as in, like, a dangerous, but I grew up on a block, like,
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
formative years, for sure.
I grew up in the hood. It was dangerous, but
I just grew up
but
in, like, a working class neighborhood with row homes where, like,
got it.
everyone, at least at the time, like, all the kids played out in the streets, which
So
me
did we,
included.
but it was
Yeah,
that was the '70s. It was like there weren't drive-bys yet. It was mostly like
right.
guys getting stabbed or something.
There
It's
was
like
shit, like,
not there's shit, but it
there
wasn't
was, like,
drive-bys
biker
yet. Yeah,
gangs and stuff like that, but
yeah. All that
it was
Hell's
not
Angels, all
like,
that shit down there.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was not like,
yeah.
my life was in threatened from playing outside, you know?
Yeah, gotcha. So being an only child, I always had to make my own fun because both my parents were at work. Obviously, I hung out a lot with the women in my family, which I've talked about before on here. My grandmother was a huge influence on me. My aunts were huge influences on me. I loved them
Mm,
all to death. Extremely capable, strong, intelligent women with ideas and opinions, and not not in the kitchen a lot of the time. The women in my family, they all cooked, but
mhm,
everybody did too. The men in the kitchen were just in there just as much, so not real traditional that way. So that was interesting. And I had a lot of relatives until I was about 13, and then my relatives started dying.
mhm,
My uncle died of a heart attack young, before just in
mhm.
his early 40s. My aunt died of cervical cancer when she was in her 40s.
Man,
My uncle disappeared off the map and was an addict for years, and I never saw him. So I lost all this family I had when I was a kid, kind of all at one time in the span of a couple of years. Like, it just started shrinking down and down and down. And then, like, my uncle who's passed away, my aunt, she moved away because she didn't want to be in that house anymore, obviously. So I didn't have
right.
contact with her. So the necessity of making a chosen family for myself became really important to me, really apparent to me at that age. It's like junior high, high school. And I really didn't have much success with the chosen family in junior high school. But when I was in high school, I found theater. And that was
Mhm,
my first chosen family that I made, was like all the theater kids, right? I was in
right.
tech, especially all the technical theater guys, basically. There was a lot of guys. There weren't a lot of girls on crew at that point in high school. So, but all the theater kids, the musical kids, the actor kids, the tech kids, all like that. It was an extended chosen family, but really the techies were tight. We were like best friends. We had gone through
Mhm,
a lot of things, a lot of challenges together where we had to work together, and a lot of emotional stuff we had to work through. And, a lot of stuff while we were working that we worked through together. And that made us really, really, really close. So that was my
yep,
first taste of it. And then that's one reason I think I went into theater, because I loved that family. It's like sort of like when I was a flea market vendor. It's a certain type of person who does it, right?
right,
And I got along with those type of people. And
right,
so that was an easy family for me to make and stay in.
right. I
You're
think
all
for
you're all pointed at one goal all the time. That's the great thing about it. It's not like about theater. You're all pointed at the show opening, right?
yeah, you
Everybody's
have something
pointed
to
at it.
produce,
You
right,
have a common
exactly.
goal right away
Mhm,
by being in that. So that makes the trip to that common goal, the bonding that happens during that trip, is unlike any other job I've ever had, really.
right,
So
right. Yeah, I mean, we can talk a lot about it, different types of like ways that we have found, people in
Hmm.
our chosen family. But I'll say that like my friendships have always been such an anchor to me, even like in high school and in particular. And I'm still very good friends with people
Hmm.
that I've known since high school. That
Yeah, me
like
too. Yeah.
one of my closest friends, I I was at her 15th birthday,
Hmm.
and I
Yeah.
we her when her father passed, like, I was there when like, she's been there through everything with me and vice versa, and,
Yeah.
like, her family is my family and vice versa, like and, like, I have, like, a lot of friends, like, from high school and college era that I'm still very close to, like, I have friends that, like, I've watched their kids grow up, and they live 10 minutes away from me, and
Yeah.
we stop over each other's houses all the time and take care of each other's dogs, and are there through health crises and parent deaths and all the things and,
Babies and weddings and
all
funerals,
of
all the
it,
stuff. Yeah.
witnesses to each other's life and their
Yeah.
family,
Yeah.
like that to me, it's not like their family. They know like I know if shit goes down, I can call them and vice versa. Like
Yeah.
we'll do our best to be there for each other.
Well, we're both
Um,
lucky in that way that we do have some close friends. I have fewer friends than you do, but the friends I have, I know I could call and they would have my back.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
Right.
they would
Except for me.
absolutely have my back, except for
No,
you.
no, I'm
I
kidding.
mean, that's a given. I mean, just look at the way we handle this podcast. Good luck. Good
Yeah.
luck.
Have
Yes,
fun with that.
have fun with that. I'm really hurting, Nora. Have fun with that. Good luck.
Wait,
No,
new
you would
phone,
never
who
do it.
dis? No.
You would absolutely be on a plane in 2 seconds if I
Yeah.
needed you. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
would too. I would be the same thing. I would be on a plane to Philadelphia in seconds flat if you needed me out there.
Thanks,
But
dude. I appreciate
we're
that.
lucky that way, and a lot of people aren't. This is like part of the loneliness epidemic, is that
Mhm.
people have lost friends and not got them back.
Yeah.
That's the thing, or drifted and not got them back. So you find yourself now in this isolated situation because we're woo woo cowboy bootstraps America. Everybody got to do it by themselves,
Individualism.
and if you don't, you're a loser. Yeah, absolute individualism.
Well,
Like
can
whether
I go into that? Can I go
yeah, we
into
can
that?
absolutely go into that.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
because
Yeah.
so there a bit of this like kind of history of, at least in America and American culture. So when we were an agrarian society, meaning we were farmers and, makers, um, the agrarian society kind of model of family meant that it was intergenerational, that a lot of
Hmm.
aunts and uncles and grandparents and like everyone was kind of working and the kids, these larger extended families were a unit that lived either together in one place or very close to each other, and they helped each other with the farms or they helped each other with their shops, and that
Hmm.
was kind of how it was. And like, minus I have to also say like for a lot of people who were enslaved, they clearly did not have access to their families,
Hmm.
and that
Yes.
was
Right.
unfortunately by design, and
Yeah.
that's awful. Um, but when the Industrial Revolution came around, a lot of these family units of like intergenerational stuff where the grandparents could be helping with the kids or helping with the food prep while people were working the fields or working the shop, like all of the things that day to day life entails, like you had more a stronger economic hold with everyone working together,
Well, and the
and
father at home all the time too, to be teaching the
Mhm.
children, about the
Exactly,
farm and all
right,
that thing,
exactly.
right?
So there
So
was
now
all the
he's
things
gone.
that
Right.
well, yeah, and so with Industrial Revolution, you had a lot of people, working they were going to to factories or offices, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that's where the nuclear family, the concept of the nuclear family kinda came about, and that's where we started to see, like, people leaving those kind of, like, places in the single family homes where the family unit meant a mother, a father, and the children, and living
Right.
under one household became what we now consider like the family, right? The
Right.
family unit.
And that didn't just happen. That's all by design, by the way.
Well,
I mean, it's
exactly,
like
but
when you talk about the public education system as well, it's all
Mhm.
geared toward making workers.
Industrial Revolution, right,
Industrial
exactly.
Revolution. We still have the same system we had at the
Yep,
beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
even though we're not
Get
in
them
the
in
Industrial
school, even
Revolution.
though we're not in that
Yeah,
anymore. It
we're
makes
kind of
no
in a tech
sense.
yeah, exactly,
It's
it's
like
crazy.
turning around a cruise ship. It's like
Mhm.
almost impossible in this country, of course. Like this is
Yeah.
what we believe. Why do we believe it? I don't know, but it's just the way we do it,
Well, it
right? It's always
kind of
that.
this kind of concept, I'm, like, realizing, like, my dad was born in 1932 and my mom was born in 1942, and
Yeah,
this was their era, right, of,
yeah.
like, growing up, and so I realized that, like, my aunts and my uncles and my parents, kind of had that model of the nuclear family when it worked in like the
Yeah.
50s. But right around like 1965 is where like that started to really fall apart, and it
Yeah.
hasn't really recovered in America since. We see the distressed family, right?
Yeah.
And that means like socioeconomic stuff. Like the thing with like in the 50s and like when the nuclear family post-industrial post-war kind of thing was like really taking off, you had wages that shot up for the white men
Hmm.
who were at the offices and stuff to be able to like take care of a whole family on their income, while the women were relegated to the housework and
Hmm.
child rearing. But it kind of, that model, while it has its shit, worked for a lot of people at
Well, it
that time.
worked though. There's a sideline to that. It worked though because of the social capital that they got from other
Yes.
activities, right? That's the
Yes.
thing. So I just watched a movie called Join or Die.
Mhm.
It's on Netflix. It's a documentary about the guy who wrote Bowling Alone,
Mhm.
which is basically about our loss of social capital, how we are not a nation of joiners anymore. We're a
Mhm.
nation of individuals.
Yep.
And the thing about the 50s, and let's be clear, the 50s were horrible for many, many people.
Yes.
Like, let's not
Correct.
romanticize the
No.
freaking 50s
We're
because the
not gonna do
50s
that.
were terrible in
Yeah.
many, many ways,
Yes.
except for movies. They were great for movies. But anyway, uh, they were joining clubs all the time. So not
Right.
only was the husband a member of probably the Moose or the Kiwanis or a
Mhm.
Mason or something like that, these or
Right.
democratic socialists or whatever was around. There was thousands and thousands of
Yes.
organizations to join, and she was probably a part of the Democratic Women or League of Women Voters or some PTA or something like that. Tons of things like that that's then supported from outside what you lost in that communal living that you had in the agrarian
Yes.
society. You then had a community that was built around clubs
Yes.
and joining, and when we started to lose that, that's when we started to get that family that doesn't work so well that you were talking about again.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
adding on to that, like
Yeah.
with the clubs and stuff, you also had full churches. You
Yeah.
had
Right.
a lot of people
Yes.
joining unions. You
Right.
had
Yes.
all of these things where these were like support units, right?
Yep.
Like these were like to kind of quote unquote replace the agrarian kind of model.
And not only to socialize, but to help you get along. These
Exactly.
brotherhoods
Exactly.
and these organizations
This
and the
was the
things that, yeah,
support
right.
network,
This is the
right?
support network that
Right.
helps you succeed and work your way toward the American dream at that point.
Yes. Right. And so as that kind of fell apart after like the mid 60s, it started to fall like that model was starting to fall apart. And
Yeah.
we can see in successive years that, we've got fewer people getting married, or they're getting married later if they're getting
Hmm.
married at all. The birth rate has been dropping basically since I was born,
Hmm.
like, so
Yeah.
you don't, the birth rate going down. You've got all these things that are like, um, the all of the support systems and all of the models are kind of like disintegrating,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
so the people who this is the thing, I have a lot of compassion for people who are building families, the nuclear family
Yeah.
in these eras, because I
It's like three times as hard.
well, exactly. And like
Yeah.
this is the thing, like, and so this is interesting to me at least. I am child free and also childless. So I
Mhm.
was not planning on having children. I wasn't shut off from it completely, but I was not planning on having children of my own. My husband is adopted, so this adds on to this conversation about
Mhm.
chosen family. He and his brother are both adopted. And we had talked that if we ever decided that we wanted to have children, we would most likely adopt.
Mhm.
That being said, I also had a cancer diagnosis and I cannot have children, biological children. So, and,
Mhm.
there's that. But for people who choose to have children of their own in this society, it can be extremely difficult because all of these support systems are evaporating.
Mhm. Yeah.
Quite honestly, a lot of people don't live near their homes. They have to often move to find the money, like
Mhm.
in different jobs with kids, and everything is left up to two people who are working in order to, often meet the economic needs of
Right.
this. And
Yeah.
so the household stuff, the child rearing stuff, all that stuff is like falls, the data is showing mostly under the women,
Right.
and
And then
so
there's
it
no
is,
place to offload that stress either.
there's no
There's no
place.
way to give the kids to the grandparents for a minute. There's no way to
Yep.
like go on a walk by yourself while somebody else, does that. You don't have the community support of anybody to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, well, and the thing is, like, people who are in better socioeconomic can buy, quote
Right.
unquote,
They
the
can buy
extended family.
time. Yeah, you
They
can buy
can buy
time.
the house cleaners, they can buy the nannies, they can buy
Right.
like it'll work well for them. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
Not that
Yeah.
it's really working well, but that is an option
No.
for them. But for those who are in not like in that position of privilege, it's way hard. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of compassion for that. And I'll also say that like there are those of us who are both like who can be either child free or childless in this society that is still very much like expects people to have biological to
Hmm.
birth children and to create these family units.
Yeah.
It can also be hard for us because it's like, well, where does that leave us in the terms of like what family means,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And so this is a lot of why this conversation I think might benefit people to take a look at this. And I wanted to talk about there's a Canadian author named David Brooks. He wrote an article, I think, for The Atlantic, and he wrote about he argued that the concept of the nuclear family was a quote was a mistake, as he put
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
He basically said that everything conspired to make the nuclear families of the 50s stable and popular, like I was saying,
Hmm.
the wages and like the clubs and the churches and all that. Um, you know, he goes on to saying like the we when that fell apart by 1965, all these support systems were declining. Like where the 50s got replaced or by the 60s, all this was being replaced by the distressed family. And
Yeah.
in the past half century, like I said, the number of people living alone has doubled. People are marrying later, birth rates are in decline, and like all these stresses are it's serious stress for people. And so, like I said, the affluent people can buy the extended family, and like those who are less affluent, it can be a disaster, you know?
Hmm.
And so the whole notion of chosen family, um, I think is really interesting. Like in the 80s in San Francisco, the notion of chosen family really kind of took off.
Hmm.
And for anyone who's like younger than us that listens to this podcast, the context and I want to like paint the picture of what the 80s in San Francisco, in particular in the queer community there, what was going on was the
Sheer
AIDS epidemic.
terror. Yeah. Sheer terror
Absolutely.
and grief.
Death.
Death, basically
Death.
death. Death that was ignored largely by everybody else. That's
Yes.
the thing,
Yep. It
including
was
our president, including the rest of the government,
yep.
including just
They turned a
everybody who could
blind
do
eye to
anything
it.
about it. Completely turned a blind eye to while thousands of people were dying. And why didn't they care? Because they were gay.
Yep, exactly. So, this whole notion of people who were estranged from their families, their biological families because they were gay, because and or like, and also if they were HIV positive or
Yeah.
anything like that. So you had all these people that were estranged that were looking for the connection and the community and the support. And the notion of chosen family came around. And I don't know that it came around then, but that was like it gained momentum
I gained
from
a lot of traction during that point. That's for sure. You
absolutely
started
right.
hearing it more and more in the media in the late 80s, early 90s in San Francisco, for
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
Right, and so it was people who befriended each other and showed up for each other and supported each other, and for some of these people, it was supporting them through their deaths,
Third deaths. Yeah. Yeah.
like, and, and the joys in the life and, like, really having cohesive units. And I also wanna say in ballroom culture in the queer community, the whole notion of chosen family is, like, also a lifeline for a lot of people. And if you don't know what ballroom culture is, it's basically I don't even it started in New York, I
Hmm.
believe.
Hmm.
But there are different like houses they're called houses. It's groups of people where there is like a mother figure and sometimes a father figure, and everyone else is like the children of these chosen families
Hmm.
that go to these drag balls and they compete, they live for each other, they are there for each other. Like Madonna's Vogue, that's
Yeah.
completely
Totally ripped off from ballroom culture, whacking,
100%.
whacking,
Yeah,
and all that stuff,
whacking, all that
whacking
stuff,
and
like
voguing, all that. Voguing was in ballroom
exactly.
culture way before she adopted it. Yeah.
A real incredible I wanna say a really incredible documentary if you haven't seen it, listeners, if you want an idea of what the vibe was in the '80s, maybe early '90s with these ballroom cultures in, like, in New York in particular, there's a fantastic documentary called Paris is
Paris is
Burning.
Burning. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great
And
documentary.
it's such a window into a specific era and a specific subculture, and that is like become a lot more mainstream now. You can see like Lady Gaga and like
Yeah.
Madonna and like kind of even Beyonce and stuff like, kind of drawing
Hmm.
inspiration from these houses as they
Hmm.
were called in the ballroom culture. But a lot of this is, chosen family coming from the queer community.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, like I said, this isn't the only place that chosen family has been. There's also in like, in different ethnic groups and different like that, like the idea of having cousins that aren't related are
Uh-huh.
chosen family,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
again, that was somewhat of my experience, and I'm realizing that's
Yeah.
probably tied to like Irish shit.
It was tribal, right? It's
Yes,
tribal in a way, right? You're in a
exactly.
tribe with your own folks,
Yes.
whether that be Irish, whether that be Catholic,
Mhm.
whether that be Irish Catholic, whatever it is, whether that be
Well, and also I
ballroom.
will say too, a lot of these notions that kind of come through with these family units of like, like having these communities also come from a lot of survival
Yeah.
mechanisms, right?
Yes.
And like,
Yeah.
it's a lot of it is like comes from, survival trauma. And
Yeah.
so of like who's going to be there for me and like how you need to show up for each other and understanding that as like a larger community, you have more strength.
Well, that's the big mistake that we make now, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
we've discounted the strength in numbers. I
Numbers.
mean, strength in numbers is a serious thing. It is because we don't have to survive. We don't have to live tooth and nail with other people and think about saber-toothed tigers and all that stuff, and whether the fire is still on and whether the cave is protected and all that.
Mhm.
You just
And if you have food.
and if you have food, right? Since we
Yeah.
don't have to worry about that stuff, we then discount the group entirely because, okay, well, we can just order groceries from the
Yep.
internet. We can just order everything else we need from Amazon,
Show up at my door and I won't even have to talk to a person.
and I can watch TV, and that's like my electric friends,
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's a big problem, man.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
Absolutely.
I like the there's an intergenerational experiment in the Netherlands that I really like too, where they've set up a housing situation, basically an apartment building, a housing block where old people live. And
Mhm.
then young college students get to live there for free, but they have so much social time that they need to devote to the larger family, right? And
Mhm.
nobody's forced into doing it. Nobody complains about it. They have incredible friendships and bonds that they make with these people, and it's a great situation for the older people. They're less lonely, and great situation for the younger people. They get all this wisdom for free, and they also get
Mhm.
to live for free while they're students. And I mean, they
Right.
still have to buy their groceries, but an incredible intergenerational experience. That's like kind of a little bit of a forced chosen. I mean, you apply for it, right? So it is,
Right.
but it ends up being a lot like chosen family because there you are again in this
Right. It's
authentic,
kind of a communal kind of
intimate,
yeah.
communal, raw kind of space. And old people are just
Mhm.
talk about whatever, so you're going to be learning something.
Right.
you know,
And I'll say, like, I'm not someone who's like communal living is the way to, is
no, not
the
at all,
ultimate
not at
answer
all.
because, that historically speaking has also kind of disintegrated in some ways for some people.
Yeah,
So
it
I
can
don't
be.
it can be. It
Yeah.
can be. Exactly.
I mean, I think if you don't go in with the utopian ideal, it can be a much more
Right.
healthy thing, right? I mean, this is a very
100%.
pragmatic solution to a problem in the Netherlands, and of course, people have a different idea, and that they're not so individualistic in Europe,
Right.
right? In most
Right.
countries in Europe, they're not like as individualistic as we are in here in America. So they already have a bent toward helping older generations. They don't just shelve them,
Mhm.
and they all have a different idea of family than we really do now. I mean, a lot of
Right.
the time. Yeah.
So well, here's a question for you. Like
Yeah.
how if you were to give advice, if you only knew then,
Yes.
um, of how to start cultivating a chosen family, for someone who might be, like you said, like not have any connections to people
Right.
and maybe might be a little more introverted and
Hmm.
like what would you suggest that what actions can they take in order to like start exploring this?
Well, that's a small question, Nora.
I
Great.
know.
Thanks for putting me
You're
on the
welcome.
spot on that one.
I
Well,
mean,
two
let's
things.
just
Two
solve
things.
everything right now.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll solve it all for you, and then we can stop
Great.
recording. You just want to go to
Perfect.
lunch. Okay, here we
Love
go.
it.
Uh, Number one, if you're a little less introverted, start the group you want to be in, right? So if
Yes.
you if
Mhm.
you if you this is what I've done with my interior design group and my men's group and
Dance.
the dance
Dance
scene,
scene. Yep.
our classes and our dances and our camps that we ran and
Mhm.
all that stuff. I've done it with groups that, I've made for my high school kids and other things like that to belong to. So if you know what you want to feel like, and you can use a tool like meetup.com to start that, then people will come along for the ride, right? Just, you can even write something like, "Hi guys, I've never started a group before. This is my first foray into it, but I would really like to make some new friends." Because most people are on Meetup to make new friends. If you look on why they're in there, make new friends is always in people's bios, right?
Yeah.
So people are there to make new friends. Whether you start a group or you join one, that's what people are there for. They want that social capital back. They just don't know how to get it. So they're doing it through different interests that they have. And there's everything from pickleball to interior design to, spiritual, awakening to whatever is on there, to like black business
Dogs,
professionals, dogs, like whatever. It's like everything is on there, right? You just have to find the group that you're in, and if the group that you want. And if the group that you want isn't there, you can start it. I mean, it costs a little bit of money to join Meetup to be an organizer, but once you do, you can start up to 3 groups. And I've had tremendous success. I have over 100 people I have 120 people in my design group right now, and I have 45 people in my men's group, right? That they don't all come to meetings, but the interest is there, and so you can connect with a community through that if you.
It's a good start for the start of a connection, the spark of a connection.
It's the spark of a connection. Yes,
I will say like the follow through is really like the key here, right? And like if possible, meet up in person, because
yes. So my groups are hybrid. So I'll say that, right? So they're in person and online. So when we have men's group, it's online, which I think is good, because it lets guys get home from work. We can still start at 7:00. We don't have to rush to a central location. You can just do that part. But then we walk every Sunday morning, right? So there's that, and anybody can show up to that one. Like the design group is all online when I teach, but then we're going on a flea market field trip this weekend. So I'm trying to do a hybrid of both, so people get that in-person thing, and they also get the.
I love the idea of just like getting people walking together. Like I have Kevin and I are really fortunate to have incredible neighbors. Like we have a great neighborhood of really good people, and their kids are great. And like, it's just, there's, we look out for each other. During COVID, it's like, oh, do you need toilet paper or, whatever, it's like kind of like we kind of have each other's backs, and it's really great. One of my neighbors, like we both belong to the local arboretum. So we'll just I'll be like, "Hey, you want to go for a walk in the arboretum?" And we'll meet up with each other and just go for a walk and talk. And it's a great
I
way
love
to connect.
walking. I could walk for hours. I used to walk all the way from Oakland to Berkeley and back just to do it. I just love it. It just clears my head.
I feel like there's like a primal kind of energy, very human element of just walking with someone, right? And like, I also have good friends that like we have Wednesday walks, right? And like, it's like, where are we meeting? And like, it's, all the other women I meet up with, they're all moms, and so they get to like really get together and like talk about the challenges of motherhood and the joys of motherhood, and like I get to listen to that, and we get to talk about what's going on in our lives and like kind of share with each other. And like, I look forward to seeing them, because they're good friends, and we try to show up for each other, right? And so it's, these are the ways to cultivate some of these supportive kind of communities of like, just ask someone for like, "Hey, you want to go for a walk?" Or like, get a coffee and a walk, or like, I'll make the coffee and bring a coffee and let's go for a walk. Get into that. Like,
yeah, I was going to say for men too, I've said this before, but like walking is great on Sunday because we share differently when we walk than when we're eye to eye, shoulder to shoulder, not eye to eye. We share different stuff. And both are great. I mean, I think my guys in my group are actually super vulnerable compared to the regular population of guys, right? So even the online stuff is pretty darn vulnerable. I mean, we have tears in group, and we have, breakdowns in group. We have a lot of things that happen. But the Sunday mornings are a different kind of sharing, and sometimes more intimate, because, we're shoulder to shoulder and we're not looking at each other eye to eye. And we just feel more comfortable that way. We don't feel like we're in a defensive position when we share, I think. And I think that's a genetic thing that's built into us, that we don't, we feel threatened when we're eye to eye and sharing with another man, that kind of thing. The other thing I was going to say as a suggestion, Nora, for people who are really introverted, right? I actually saw this group not long ago, which was introverts reading together, right? And basically it was a group that started, you go to a cafe, everybody brings their book, nobody talks to each other, and then you go home. right? And it's great because basically
You
what the
get to
people
be amongst each other,
you get
right?
to be amongst each other, and
Yeah.
here's your right, and maybe eventually you talk to each other, but that's not the main aim of the group. The main aim of the group is to take people who are so introverted they have a lot of trouble like making any social contact whatsoever. So they take that off the table entirely. Bring your book, read, and then you go home, and we're all doing it together. They might all
I
do it around a table,
I
anything
love
like
this,
that.
and
Yeah,
I'm laughing because I'm like, I would be a fucking nightmare for these
you
people.
would be, you would be. Yeah, like,
I
hey,
know
what are
that
you
at
reading?
least.
They'd be
Yeah.
like, get away from me. It says
I
no
can't
talking.
help it. I'm
Yeah.
like, I am maybe a little. Everyone's always like, "Of course you met this person," and you
Yeah,
started.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, "Sorry, not sorry," but yeah.
Immediate ban from that group for you, I'm afraid. But that's it's a funny thing, but it's also a really sweet thing that
No,
somebody
it is. I
thought,
love it. I
and
love
somebody
it.
thought that hey, I feel like this. This is what I'm talking about starting the group you want. Hey, I feel like this. I really don't want to talk to anybody, but I sure need some human contact.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's figure out a way
Amongst
around that. So I think that kind of inventiveness, just really ask yourself, what do you want?
yeah,
What do you want out of your chosen family? Is it emotional support? Is it fun? Is it all of that? What is it? Like what do you want to happen? And then do you want to do it? It doesn't want to be activity based, or you just want to talk, or is it
right,
like what is it? And then you
right.
figure that out, and then you start that group, and slowly but surely people will come. You just have to
Yeah,
be a little patient. I think there was 2 guys in my men's group for almost a month, and then I got 5 more all of a sudden, and then it just started an avalanche after that. So you have to just be patient on it and not think, oh, nobody wants to join my group because it's weird or whatever. Just
right.
wait. Just
Just
wait.
try, or just keep trying different stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the thing.
I did that. I had a group that I was going to start for men picking up litter around Lake Merritt, and nobody joined it. And I was like, okay, well, that's gone. I'll do something else. And then I said to
Right,
my guys, I'm
exactly.
like, you want to pick up litter? They're like, yeah, we should do that. I'm like, okay, well, I didn't need to start that other group. I could have just done it with you, but there you go.
I will also say, like, just based on our experience, if you are someone who's looking for like connection and community, get into partner dance classes, whether
Oh
it's
yeah.
swing dancing or tango or ballroom or something like that. You even if you're like, I have no idea how to dance. Here's the thing: beginner classes, no one does. Like,
Yeah.
and the
Nobody
teacher's
does.
not a good teacher is not expecting you to know anything. They're gonna bring you, hold your hand, and show you some stuff and let you practice. But you meet a lot of people uh, in very easily because you have to interact with each other, and
You're
it's like
rotating in class all the
you're
time between
rotating in
partners, right?
class and like you're meeting new people, and a lot of times it becomes just this bonding experience because everyone's
Right.
kind of like nervous and learning with each other
Yeah.
alongside of each other. And a lot most of the time it turns into getting coffee or food after class
Or
or like
getting
these
married and having babies,
yeah,
right? I mean, how
I'm
many marriages
married
came out of
to
my
someone
class, right? Yeah.
from the dance scene. Right,
Right.
exactly. Like the amount of people that meet each other and like you just end up in this community of people and learning from each other and it's a really cool thing. And this is the thing like we were talking about in the 50s where there were all these places to like join stuff and
Yeah.
I feel like if you want to go pickleball, if you I mean there's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
And I know for a lot of people, especially if there are people who have the nuclear family and are raising kids and are working full time and like I know it can be really hard to be like I have no time or money or energy to do anything other than like what I am in survival mode.
Yeah.
I get that. It doesn't have to be leaving your house. Invite someone over and just tell them like my house is a mess and you're going to have to deal with that.
Meet online if that's the only thing you can do too.
Right.
Meet online, you
Exactly.
know?
Like just start somewhere.
Yeah,
Start
just start
somewhere.
somewhere. Yeah. I mean, talking to each other is an amazing tonic, right? I mean, that's an amazing tonic for the soul because we end up in our houses all day long and we end up thinking all these, getting these thought spirals that
Yep.
that prey upon us, and we lose all context for what the world actually is when we don't go outside and when we don't interact with other people.
And how
And then
people actually are,
and how
like
people actually are, right? That's the other thing. Like, if you want to restore your faith in humanity, get out and talk to people because there's a lot of good people in the world, a lot
oh,
of
100%.
incredibly good people in the world,
Get off the YouTube comments.
right? Because you're
Get off
not
the
gonna see
internet.
that. You're not gonna see any of them on social media. You're gonna see all the evil and the oligarchs and everything else. You're not gonna see
Yep.
the good people in the world because good people are boring,
And also a
right?
lot of good people are just like, "No, thank you anymore on that,"
Yeah, right.
like
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. I mean, it's not. I shouldn't say they're boring. They're not newsworthy. I should say, right?
right,
I mean, because they're just out there being good people. So it's
right.
not, yeah, right. you need some drama if you're going to do the news, right? So get off of that shit and like get back and get reconnected with the people who are really existing out there in reality. And you'd be surprised how many nice people you find out there,
Absolutely.
with not such
Absolutely.
odious opinions as some that you see on television and on the internet.
Oh my God, I know.
Yeah.
I will also say for those of us who have like kind of our chosen family, and for me, they're kind of all over the country and the world, really.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't get to see people that I love dearly that are like family to me as much as I would like to, but
Mhm.
I take every opportunity that I can to see them when I'm able to, or to
Yeah.
talk to them when I'm able to, and like catch up. But I was gonna say, like, for those of us who don't have children and don't have the traditional version of like the family unit
Hmm.
that American society really like quite often only calls family.
Yeah.
um, I've friends who are family to me, and their kids are family to me, and I don't get to see them as much. But I just want to say, I'm finally at the age where a lot of my friends who had children, that they're getting a little more bandwidth
Hmm.
of being able to reconnect, and it's
Oh, that's
really
nice. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Right. It's really cool that there are more people who are like, they're not in the baby stage and all of the stuff that's like so demanding of their time and energy, where they're like
Yeah.
that they're able to like their heads are like popping up. And quite honestly, it's kind of interesting too, because a few of them have gone through divorces, and that's
Hmm.
been really tough, but it's also freed them up in some ways of not
Hmm.
having the kids 24/7, and
Yeah.
so that they can actually find another part of, like, who they are
Hmm.
again,
Hmm.
and who, like, reconnect again. So,
Hmm.
I'm not saying, like, divorce is a great thing to go
Right.
through,
Yeah.
but the flip side of that is, like, quite a few friends have been able to, like,
Come out the other side.
come out the other side,
Hmm.
and, like, so if you're, like, in your 20s or 30s and you're like, my friends are dropping off like flies, and, they're having kids and I'm not there yet, or I don't know if I'm gonna be there and I miss them, and, like, kinda mourning some of those friendships, um, give some grace
Hmm.
to the folks who are in, creating their own families, because that's a big mountain to climb.
They'll come back,
They
They
will
may
come
not
back.
they may not come back till they're empty nesters, but then when they do
Yep,
come back, welcome them back, because
exactly.
it's no good to be like, you abandoned me for 15
Right,
years or 18 years or whatever, and now you want to be friends again. I mean, you could
right.
easily say that, but look, they were doing a really hard job during that time, and
Yeah.
they didn't have the bandwidth for you. Their priorities shifted, and that's
They
just the
barely
way
have the
life
bandwidth for
is.
themselves,
They barely
like,
had
that's
they weren't sleeping
yeah.
for 18
It's not
years,
about
man.
you. Yeah,
Cut them a break,
yep,
welcome them back into the fold, and say, yeah, I'm glad you're back, man. I'm really
right,
glad you're back. It's really nice to be with you again.
right.
You know.
I'm not gonna tell people what they need to do, but I'm just, like, keep in mind that for a lot
I
of these
am. I
people.
just did, Nora. I'm going to keep telling people exactly what to do.
Oh,
When they
you
come back, you
asshole.
let them in the door, no matter who they are. No, you're right, Nora. You're
No, I just
absolutely
wanna
right.
say we're at
So
that
prescriptive.
we're in an era now where, like, there are more teenagers, and, like, I have friends that, like, have kids in college now, and it's like, "Whoa," and they're starting to, like, free up a bit,
Yeah.
and it's cool too to, like, hang out with their kids, because their kids are fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I have quite a few friends, but their kids are cool, like, they're
Yeah.
real cool, and,
Yeah.
like, I
I
wanna
have
hang
I
out
have
with them.
friends with really funny kids too, which
Yeah,
is great. I
I
always
love
love
that.
that. Yeah.
But you get to be part of their chosen family. You get to be
Right.
the auntie that isn't blood related, but,
Right.
like, and part of their chosen family,
It's good
so.
being the fun uncle.
Oh, yeah,
That's
the
a nice
funkle.
thing to be. Yeah, funkle. The funkle. Spelled
I
with a
love
K. I'll take it if it's spelled with a K. I'll be
exactly.
the funkle. Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
I love
I
it. That's
like
a
it. I'm the funkle.
Funkle
The
Paul.
OG funkle.
I love it.
Doesn't sound right. It sounds kind of like carbuncle. I don't know if I like it or not, but anyway.
What's carbuncle? I don't even know what
It's an
that is.
ancient thing that you wouldn't, a medical condition you wouldn't know about, so don't worry about it.
Great.
It's kind of like gout. You don't really know what gout is unless you're a doctor, but it was there at one point,
Or you have it. Yeah,
You
that's
have, or
when
you
you know.
have, yeah. If you have it in your elbow like I did one time, then you know what it is. But yeah, so funny.
Oof. Isn't that like a swelling? I don't know what that
Yeah,
whole
it's
thing is.
swelling. Yeah, yeah,
Swelling.
yeah. I
Yeah,
got it.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know a
yeah.
little bit.
I got it during a dance camp one time. That's when we decided to
You
retire. We're
got
like, okay,
gout at
that's
a dance.
yeah. I got gout at Swing Out, New Hampshire, man. I had to like not teach for a while, so it was
Oof.
really dire. It was a stress response, obviously, to still being in the dance business. So I decided to get out at that point, and I haven't had gout since.
Was it a stress response?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
No shit.
Yeah,
Oh,
Sharon
wow.
said, "Yeah, I know what this is. This isn't like something you randomly got. This is you like not being able to take this business anymore. You got to get out."
Oh,
So we
man.
stopped. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Anyway,
mean,
a little
there's
bit of
that.
dance history there for you. Sorry,
Good
sorry,
times.
chosen family. Yeah, let's get back on topic. Back on topic.
Yeah,
Back on topic.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything else you want to add to like how people can connect and cultivate their own chosen families?
I mean, it's up to you. That's what
Yeah,
I
I
got to
guess.
say.
Yeah, good
That's the
point.
thing. That the responsibility begins and ends with you to cultivate the kind of community that you want to have around you. I can't. The fact how many people there are in the world that think that somebody is coming to save them or somebody's coming to change their life is really problematic to me,
Yeah, the
because
power's in
nobody's
your
coming to
hands.
save us. Nobody's coming to change your life. You're
Mhm.
entirely responsible for what happens to you.
Yep.
Don't put it off on anybody else or anything to do. So like, again, I'm not being prescriptive here. I'm saying that sort of as a generalization
Right.
thing. But like, you know, uh, if you want to have that community, you got to build it somehow or
Or
join one.
you gotta join. You
You
gotta
got
be a
to join.
joiner.
You got to
Right.
join, or you got to build it. And I'm sorry if you're overly introverted, but like I said, there are ways, even if you're really introverted, like that silent book club, to make a thing that makes you, that starts you in that direction of chosen family.
Right.
I mean, you
Right.
don't have to tell marginalized people how to do it; they already do it. I mean, I think we're speaking mainly to white people here,
Yeah.
right?
Good
Because
point.
like the
Cis
marginalized
white
communities
people.
have been chosen family for like forever, right? I
Yeah.
mean, out of necessity, out of
Yes.
protection,
I was
out
saying
of
survival.
economic, yeah,
Yeah.
everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like
Absolutely.
you don't have to talk to gay people about how to do chosen family. They fucking
Right.
invented, they invented
Yeah,
part of it.
they've had this going on for a hot minute because
Yeah, right,
of
right,
survival. Right.
right,
Exactly.
exactly. So
Absolutely.
really, we're talking to those people who aren't in those communities, so the more privileged among us, really.
Right.
And
Right.
it's very funny that the more privileged among us are the loneliest people that we have,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that funny?
Well, and I think that at least in America, like I think again, it goes back to the like, exactly what I was saying, like the Industrial Revolution, kind of like, all right, you like basically break up this idea of your extended community and your
Yeah,
extended family and your support system, and then you go to an office or you go to a factory or you go
right.
elsewhere and you put your kids in this particular schooling system, and and it becomes the rat race very quickly because you just dissolved. Like again, I don't know many people that are going to churches,
No,
like,
no, no. Church
and like,
attendance is way down and stuff too. I
yeah,
mean,
and like,
not that
I
we're
don't
advocates for that, but
exactly, but it was
faith
a
was a
community for
thing that brought
people,
people
right?
together. Yeah, yeah, yeah. For
And, like,
useful things. Yeah,
right, and everyone's got their personal relationships with, these organizations and stuff, and like, it's valid for a lot of people to like be like, no, thank you.
yeah,
But where do you find that community then? And like, I think, it's important, we have the internet, which I think is a good way to initially connect, but I think a lot of people use the internet as like it can only go so far
yeah,
with connection,
yeah,
right? It's I don't want to say it's the illusion of connection because I've connected with people like on the internet and I've
yeah. I
like,
certainly do.
become, that can be a catalyst, but there's nothing replacing being together, like especially when it comes to life shit. And,
Yeah,
and like there's nothing like I can listen to a DJ and like view a DJ even live streaming from somewhere and be like, this is awesome. But it doesn't have the same energy if I'm in the club on the dance floor with a bunch of people enjoy dancing to a DJ. Like it does not replace it. So like being amongst a community, there is no there's no synthetic version of that is ever going
no,
to
no, that's
connect the
true.
same.
Yeah,
It's primal. It is primal. It is human. We are we are meant to gather together in
absolutely.
community.
And I want to sort of end on this quote from Robert Putnam for what I want to say. So Robert Putnam was the guy who wrote Bowling Alone, and again that movie Join or Die that I was watching. His central theme of everything is like democracy doesn't survive without groups. And so
Mm,
it's not just like a loneliness thing. It's like the future of our republic demands that we stop with this increasing individualism. And he says,
mhm.
in a world of increasing individualism, we must find ways to rebuild the social ties that once held us together. Is his main thing. So
Mm,
it's a bigger deal than I'm lonely, I need to find somebody else. It's
yeah.
actually how we all
Get through this
get
era.
through this thing that we're experiencing called
Yeah.
life, you know, whatever the politics are at the moment and all that stuff. But
Dearly beloved.
right,
Dear
exactly,
individuals.
exactly. Yeah,
Prince
same
knew what
thing.
was up. No.
Thank you, Prince. Anyway,
Yes, exactly.
yeah. So it's imperative that we do this in one way or the other if we're going to survive
Or at
as a
least
society,
try.
or at least try,
Continue
because
trying.
as we said, what you get from groups is a sense of agency. You get a power, right? That's like, we can do something that I can't do, right?
Yep.
And that's what the Industrial Revolution took away from men going to work too. The farm was our job, right? Everybody's job, right? Whether the women were doing the food and the baking and the cleaning and all that, the guys were out in the fields, and the grandparents were taking care of children. It's a system. It's a closed system, right?
Yep.
And then you open up that system, you send the man to work. All of a sudden, it's his job. It's not our job anymore.
Yep.
He's doing the onerous work to then, provide for his family.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Which is also when you have that, I'm just going to jump in here real quick just to make a point as well of banking, where it becomes his job and it's literally a job that pays him.
Right.
It has its own trappings, but when it becomes the woman's job of free labor,
right. Yeah.
Who is dependent on the men showing up and contributing in a way without being like, peace out, I'm taking the money and running and leaving you behind. Yeah. I mean, you can see so many things like that.
Well, it goes from cooperation to competition, right? I mean, that's what it is, right? I mean, the closed farming system is a complete cooperative environment where everybody is, I don't want to say equal because, it wasn't there wasn't a whole lot of feminism going on the farm.
No.
But everybody had their job, though, right?
Everyone had a role.
It was, I would say, maybe it wasn't perfectly egalitarian, but it was interdependent.
Yes.
Right. Everybody was interdependent on everybody else, like life is. Nature is interdependent, right? But somehow we think, especially in America, that we can be individual and not interdependent with everybody else,
right?
And everything else, nature especially. We just, you can tell, we cut down nature all the time.
Yep.
Without thinking a second thought about it.
Yep.
If it gets us more oil or more Coca-Cola or whatever.
Oh, yeah, for these systems. Oof.
Yeah.
I know.
Love to end on an up note, huh?
I know.
All right.
On that note, see you next time.
Well, we will end here, but I would say that
yes,
the positive aspects of group and chosen family far outweigh any negative aspects that you will get into. Let's join things, guys.
Power's in your hands.
The power's in our hands. Let's join
or
things.
if you're not joining, just start something.
Start
somewhere. Just
please make something. Make something. I'll join it.
Somewhere.
Make it.
There's plenty of opportunities for connecting with people, even if that's at your grocery store or wherever. Just look someone in the eye, say hello, and start there.
That's how Nora and I met. I love Nora.
I love Paul. Look, we got a podcast together.
I love you, Nora.
I love you too.
All right. Well, thanks, listeners, for joining us for this hour of Chosen Family. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye. If you'd like to get in touch with us about anything you've heard on the show, please feel free to drop us an email at ifweonlyknewthenpod@gmail.com.